What's going on, everyone? Thanks for joining me here again today. In today's video, we're going to be going over my helmet Motovlog setup. Without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to skip an intro today. Some changes to my channel are going to be coming soon for the better, in my opinion. Stick around for future videos for a little bit more information on that. For now, let's get started on the helmet. The helmet that I'm using is a Biltwell lane splitter helmet. It is not the best helmet to motovlog with because, as you can see on the side there, the vents in the front are not closable. That allows air to get through, and it really starts to mess with your audio if you don't do some sort of modification to block off the airflow in the front. Before we get too far into the audio side of things, I'm using a GoPro Hero 6 with a Ulanzi plastic housing. This housing has a spot for the GoPro mic adapter built into it. Before I was using this housing, I actually had an aluminum one that had the ND filter bracket mount, whatever you want to call it, built in. Now, this aluminum cage isn't very heavy in comparison to the plastic ones, but what I found an issue is that in order to use an external audio mic, I didn't have a way to mount the GoPro audio adapter to it. So I had to kind of rig a zip tie setup, and overall, even though it had the ND filter attachment for it, it just didn't really work out for me. So I switched to this plastic case with the mic adapter housing built into it. That helps quite a bit in tidying things up in the front. The microphone plugs in right to the side, and I have it mounted up into the helmet. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Overall, I really like this case because it does have the provision to plug the microphone adapter that GoPro makes you use for external audio sources into it. Mounting the GoPro in it is super simple as well. Just drop it in, slide your door on the back, and it locks into place. For the mount to the helmet, I'm using the bicycle/motorcycle ball swivel mount, and that gives me the freedom to move it around on the front of the helmet as I need to in order to get it lined up and centered. It's super stiff, doesn't move, doesn't wiggle around. Your helmet and your neck are essentially a stabilizer all in themselves. So as far as video stabilization is concerned, I don't typically use it because I find that it ends up kind of washing the video into a artificial looking video, and that's not the look that provides the best video in my opinion. As far as the video settings, I'm in 4K at 16:9, 24 frames per second with superview on. As far as the Protune settings are concerned, the menu on the right hand side, the shutter is set to automatic, the ISO min is 100, ISO max 1600, white balance at auto, sharpness at low, that's key, and the color set to GoPro. With the audio mic adapter plugged in, you would set the manual audio control to stereo only, which sounds a little weird, but the audio is turned off on your Protune video settings. As far as the microphone, the end of it I have hanging out that plugs into the mic adapter on the side there, and then underneath the chin curtain I have the wires just tucked into place. Once these are all tucked in nice and tight on the bottom, I have found that the best way to mount the microphone is by tucking it up inside the cheek pad itself. The microphone that I'm using is a Purple Panda, and I'm actually have it wrapped in not only a dead cat, but then a small piece of microfiber as well. Zip tied the microfiber to the microphone. The microphone doesn't have to be an expensive $100 to $200 microphone. This Purple Panda is less than $30 usually on Amazon, and it does a fantastic job as long as you not only wrap it in a dead cat, but some other sort of sound muffling, making sure that the intake vents on your helmet aren't in a direct path for the microphone, and if they are, try to block them off as much as possible. Like I mentioned, I blocked off all of these front vents with foam in the front. At one point I did have duct tape on there as well to try and muffle out as much sound as possible. When editing, I don't have the experience with color correction or audio correction, so what you see and hear coming from the camera and the microphone is what's recorded. A few other things that I would suggest getting if you want to get started into motovlogging: extra batteries. 100% gonna need extra batteries. They usually last 45 minutes to an hour. If you start shooting in, say, 4K 60 frames a second, or you're going for an extended period of time and you turn your camera on before you actually start recording, you won't get very much time out of it. And that's kind of a common thing with GoPros. As far as their battery life, they suck. So do your best to invest in batteries. I found out that the new Hero 9 does not use the same batteries as the 6, 7, and 8. The 6, 7, and 8 I know for sure all use the same battery. The 7 and 8, I believe, were the ones that came out with the blue tops. They last a little bit longer. You can use the blue tops with your Hero 6 if you get one of those, as long as you update the firmware to the latest generation, which you'll do through the GoPro app or on your computer. Some other accessories that you could use but definitely don't need to in order to get started would be different kinds of mounts. This one, for instance, is an aluminum ball swivel mount, and it will essentially allow you to change the angle of the mount to wherever you would like, which allows you to get cool shots, like when you are pointing the camera directly down at the exhaust, for instance, like this clip here. Another nifty accessory would be the clamp mount that GoPro offers. There's actually two different ways you can use this: with the extendable flexible arm that is sturdy enough to hold itself in place, but I wouldn't recommend trying to mount it to the handlebars. I did for like one video, and the entire time it essentially kept rattling into a different position. But you can also use this clamp to mount a base plate directly to it, which will give you the opportunity to clamp it onto your windshield, for instance, or a handlebar, maybe a part of the subframe, again, to get a rolling shot of the tire, an exhaust, the front wheel, something along those lines. A tripod is definitely a useful tool in getting still shots or essentially face-to-face Q&As like we are right now. And as I mentioned before, the ND filters are another great option for video correction outside of an editing software. This is the little adapter bracket that I was referring to on that cage. Just snaps onto the front. Take your ND filter and spin it on, whatever one you decide to use. A kit of ND filters with all different shades can be had on Amazon for 20, 30 bucks. I got this one from Amazon. It's a Neewer. It's a 52 millimeter ND filter set that fits the housing for my Hero 6. For the camera that's mounted on the front of the bike, I'm using a GoPro Hero 8. The same video settings as the Hero6. Shutter speed set to auto, white balance auto, ISO minimum to 100, ISO max to 1600, sharpness at low, color at GoPro. As far as the sharpness that I was talking about earlier, I set it to low because you can always add sharpness later on in post-production and editing. You can never take it away. As far as the ISO settings, I have them set to 100 and 1600 now because I don't actually use ND filters anymore. In the past I did. I changed the shutter speed to 1/48. If you want any more information on the ND filter setup, definitely check out Chase on Two Wheels Motovlog setup video that he has. I'll leave a link for it in the description. That's where I got a lot of the ideas and the kind of fine-tuned tips to make the videos that I do. Some things I have changed a little bit. I stopped using the ND filters. I went back to an automatic shutter speed instead of the 1/48. I changed the ISO settings back to factory. The ISO settings and the shutter speed settings are definitely ones that you want to mess with and kind of fine tune if you are using ND filters. It does provide somewhat of a more vivid color, especially with clouds in the sky and things like that. As far as overall settings, I'm not using anything too advanced. I'm not using anything too expensive. Everybody has a budget, and you definitely don't have to start out with GoPros. You don't have to start out with multiple GoPros. You don't have to have the latest and greatest GoPro. I've been shooting my helmet footage with a Hero6 that you see me on right now since I started. It wasn't until later that I picked up the Hero8 and decided to use it on the windshield instead of on my helmet. With the Hero8, they do have the media mod that goes around it. That way you don't have to use the microphone adapter from the Hero6. One thing I will say about the Hero8 that I don't really like is if I'm going to use the media mod, then I have to take the battery door off in order to plug it in. And that essentially exposes the battery to come out the side while riding or doing whatever it is that you're capturing. And to me, that's not really a great design, but it's also one that doesn't seem to be a problem for most. They actually do make a door aftermarket on Amazon that has a hole in the bottom of it for the USB-C port for the microphone adapter to plug into. The media mod is something that I'm curious to try out at some point. This may end up becoming the camera that I use on my helmet in addition to the media mod, so I can plug my microphone directly into it instead of using the big chungus, microphone adapter that essentially will hang off of everything if you don't have a housing that holds it in place. As it stands now, this is somewhat bulky on the helmet, but it's not too heavy. I don't feel myself getting fatigued from the camera weight on the helmet itself. It's well balanced, and it's not in my line of vision when I'm riding. If I forget to mention something in the video, or I don't go over a question that you do have, leave a comment down below. I'm more than willing to answer any questions that you might have. As far as settings are concerned, it's not too crazy or advanced. I had no editing experience prior to starting this channel. I had no camera experience prior to starting this channel as far as ISO settings, shutter speeds. About the only thing I knew how to do was press the record button and see what came out. I learn as I go. I learn tips in editing software as I go. I definitely watch other motovloggers to see how they mount their systems, how they record, the ISO settings that they use, the video and audio settings that they use. Like I mentioned, Chase on Two Wheels Motovlog helmet setup, I think 1 or 2 generations old now, is the one that I based most of my gear off of. So definitely check out his video when it comes time to setting it up. If you have any other questions that I didn't cover, his video may cover them. And at the same time, if neither of them did, ask below. When I'm not shooting footage for YouTube or using it as a dash camera sort of thing while riding, My other go-to is my Bell SRT helmet. This was had on sale from Revzilla. Usually the Bell SRTs are less than $200 as is. This is the Heartluck one. I picked it, one, because growing up, Carey Hart was one of my idols in the motorcycle world, and two, the color scheme works perfectly with my XSR. I have a Sena 20K Evo mounted to this with the slim speakers installed. The slim speakers aren't the best in terms of volume or audio quality, so if your helmet has room for the bigger speakers, I would definitely give that a shot. As far as I'm aware, the new HD speakers that they came out will work with the Sena 20K Evo, 30K Evo, and essentially match the new 50 series speakers. So that's going to wrap it up for my helmet motovlog setup video. If you have any questions about the gear that I use, the audio or video settings, or something that I didn't quite answer that you're curious about, leave a comment below with the question. As always, if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you disliked it, hit that dislike button twice. Until next time, be a good apple. I'll see you guys around.